Okay, so we're going to go over chapter 19, which is the purchasing chapter in the help file. To access the purchasing, you can get there two ways. You can either click on the purchasing icon on your toolbar, or you can click on the tools export, or just tools purchasing. Now it's no longer purchasing. Very important that when you are on the purchasing window, when you're on the purchasing window, it is only going to show items on any orders in QuoteWerks. If you have quotes, they will not show up. If you have invoices, they will not show up. It's only going to show items on orders. So this goes kind of back to, if you're going to be using QuoteWerks for purchasing, it is going to be important that you do file convert to order in order for those items to show up here. The first option you're going to see is a radio button that's grayed out currently on mine. But if you had an open order, that's what you would be able to select, and it would show you just the items for that specific order instead of every single order in QuoteWerks. Now, this is my training installation, so I do have over 1,000 items in my purchasing ready to be ordered. Obviously, yours is probably going to be significantly less than that. So we're going to do the multiple orders section first. If you want to see the current open order, I'll show you how that works as well. But it works the same way as the multiple orders. Just multiple orders will obviously let you kind of batch orders into one purchase order for the vendors instead of doing them one at a time. So when you have your orders selected on the purchasing, you have the option to select the vendor, customer. You can do a ticket number if you're using ConnectWise, and the item scope. The item scope is basically your non-purchased items, your purchased items, or all items. Typically, when you're doing ordering, you want to do the non-purchased items, but you haven't purchased them yet. You can also filter by date. So if you wanted to say today, these are all the items that have been converted to orders today, or on orders that have the date of today. You can filter by vendor. So when you click on vendor, you'll see here when you select vendor, it'll actually show you that only these vendors, will show up. And if you select a specific vendor, it'll only show you the items that are in that vendor. Now, when you select your items, it's actually going to tell you how many items you selected and their total value. If you are using Tech Data, Ingram Micro, Stinex, D&H, and you're going to be using the online ordering, I'm going to show you how that works first, just because it has a couple different steps. So let's do this month, and perfect, there's Tech Data. So I have a few items for Tech Data that I need to order. As I select these items for Tech Data, you'll see at the bottom, I have free shipping when my minimum is met of $1,000. So it's telling me that I need $372 more of items in order to get to my free shipping. So if you remember, before lunch we talked about setting up vendor maintenance under the utilities menu. In your vendor maintenance window, so we're actually going to go back there. So if you go to utilities, vendor maintenance, and then if we click on Tech Data and edit, you'll see there's actually a free shipping minimum field. That's where you can specify your dollar value of your shipping minimum for this vendor. And this will work for any vendor. Obviously we can only do the online ordering through the 4 vendors in QuoteWerks, but if you use another vendor and they offer you free shipping once you get to a certain amount before you submit a PO, you can set that up for them as well. So mine's $1,000 for Tech Data, and then when I go back into my purchasing, here, it's going to tell me what my minimum and how much I am there, and once I reach there, it'll say, hey, you've reached the minimum, so I can add or pull other items as needed. Now when you select your items, you have the option to update with Utilize. So if you're using Utilize integration, you'll see there's an Utilize panel button here, and you can click on that, and that'll actually show you this item. And this will give you a chance to source it from a different vendor. So if it's been a while since you quoted this customer, and you need to source it from another vendor, maybe they don't have it in stock anymore, you can actually select a different vendor by using this Utilize panel button. I'm going to select a couple items. I want to make sure I get my free shipping. And then I have two options. I can create the PO, or I can place the online order and then create the PO. Since it is tech data and it's one of the vendors we support, I can place the online order directly through QuoteWerks. If it's not one of the vendors we support, then this button won't even be available. You'll only be able to create the PO. So let's go ahead and do the place online order. And this is going to bring up the tech data online order form. Now, if you're usually using Ingram Micro or Synex or D&H, all the forms are going to look very, very similar with some minor changes. Just some different fields that will be available, but for the most part, it's going to look exactly the same. You can specify your PO number here. If you leave it blank, then you don't have to fill this in. This is basically the QuoteWerks PO number. So this is just one if you want essentially the vendor to reference this PO number to you. You can put that in here. Like I said, if not, you can leave it blank. If you're exporting to QuickBooks, go ahead and leave it blank because you may be using QuickBooks PO number. If you know you're not using QuickBooks PO number, you can go ahead and fill that in with either the next PO number or if you want to type it in. The PO description and PO reference ID are strictly QuoteWerks fields. These are just so you can identify a specific PO in QuoteWorks if you go to look for it later. Not required, you don't have to fill it out, it's just there if you need it. And then your order pricing type, if it's educational, commercial, federal, all that information, you can choose what type of order it is. On the right hand side, this special instruction, this is important if you have any kind of negotiated pricing with your vendors. This will actually flag the order to be reviewed by a human before it actually goes through the ordering process. So if you've got special pricing on your quote, anything like that, you'll want to make sure that you put in your special instructions here or reference the quote number that you got from the vendor in order for them to review the quote before it has gone through its order process. Then your payment, typically you're going to pay with terms. With tech data, you can pay with the credit card on file if you have one. I think you do have to have like some kind of like minimum or some type of history with them in order to have a credit card on file. So for the most part, it's going to be terms. And then how do you want to handle your back order handling? You can need ship available or ship complete, and then the shipping information. So you can put in the information where it's being shipped to, the end user information if you want to, and then we do integrate with like order tracker and tech data, so you can fill that out information as well. Now this is a live order form, so I'm not going to go too much further because we don't need these 3 items, and I would like to keep my job. But you can see you can verify the current pricing availability before placing the order, so you can just make sure everything matches up, and then you validate the order, and then you submit the order. So that's it. So the online ordering through the vendors is very straightforward. It's very easy. That's a really nice thing about it. So we're going to pretend that I did submit this order. So when you submit this order, QuoteWerks is going to create a purchase order document in QuoteWorks. This purchase order document can then be exported to your CRM if you're using ConnectWise or Autotask, or to your accounting if you're using QuickBooks or Sage 50/PStreet. So I'm going to hit cancel here, but really I created it already. I ordered that. And then this window pops up. This says create the purchase order. So when I create the purchase order, this is going to be my QuoteWorks purchase order, and then whoever I have set as my purchase order integration, there's going to be a checkbox here. Now mine's blank because I don't have one set, so because I want to show you where we go back to set that, because we talked about that very early this morning. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel, and if you remember, under your Tools Options menu, under the Accounting tab, you set your purchase order integration. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do QuickBooks for my purchase order integration, and then hit OK, because I know a lot of you are using QuickBooks. Majority of you use QuickBooks. Anytime you're going to integrate with QuickBooks or Sage 50, our integrations are very similar between the two, you do need to have that program open and running. So if you're using QuickBooks, if you're using Sage 50, it needs to be open and running on your machine, or it's not going to work. So let's go to our purchasing. We've got our purchasing integration set ready to create our PO in QuoteWorks. So that's one thing that you want to remember, is that what we're doing here is actually creating the PO in QuoteWorks first, then we will actually export it to QuickBooks. Alright, so tech data, select these 3 items, create PO. So it opens up, the first thing it tells you is that if you want to use the QuickBooks generated PO number, go ahead and leave the PO number blank. If you want to put it in manually, you can do that. If you want to use the next QuoteWorks PO number sequence, click on the ellipsis button and we'll just populate it for you. So you're going to have essentially 3 different options. You can leave it blank, we'll use the next QuickBooks PO number. You can put it in manually, or you can have QuoteWerks automatically put it in. So that would be the next PO number. I'm going to leave mine blank, I'm going to go ahead and have QuickBooks populate it for you. You can set your PO date. Reference ID, foreign account, description. These 3 fields here are for QuoteWerks. You don't need to really worry about that in QuickBooks. Once you've set this information and you're ready to create the PO, there's going to be a checkbox that says export to QuickBooks. This is if you obviously want to export this purchase order document into QuickBooks. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And remember, I have QuickBooks open here in the bottom, or Sage50, running. So now this is saying, okay, this item doesn't exist in QuickBooks, we need to create it. So you're going to go select your item type, select the account. If you have a preferred vendor, you can set that, and then hit OK. And it'll repeat it for any items that don't exist. Like 2 out of 3 items didn't exist, so it created those. So it created QuickBooks PO number 39 for me.
What about your GL codes? Do you then have to go into your accounting and adjust all your GL codes?
No, it prompts you to select those.
Where, here?
In Sage50, yeah.
Right, so you gotta do it on that end.
No,
So even though you're creating the PO here and you're exporting it, you still have to, on the accounting side, then go and do your GLs, right?
If the item's not in your accounting
Yeah.
system, you create a template that pushes it to the right accounts.
Right,
So if it already says, hey, I see that part number's already in
right.
accounting, it doesn't have to
We
create
have
it.
so many different GLs,
Right.
so, yeah, that's, no,
Okay.
we're good.
So once your purchase order has been created in QuoteWorks, you can click on this purchase orders tab, and this is going to show you a list of all the purchase orders that you've created in QuoteWorks. So this is not a list of what's been exported to QuickBooks or what's been exported to Sage50. This is what is a PO document in QuoteWorks. So if I click today for my date, you'll see I have my 1 PO. Now there's my PO number 39, and my reference ID is QB because I exported it to QuickBooks. You'll also see it has QB with a little L. That means that it's linked to a QuickBooks purchase order. So that's what those little icons mean there.
Is that Quote Valley or is that?
QuickBooks.
We don't have that tab.
Oh yeah, that's new. You guys had like a couple of things. I don't know.
We didn't get this back till last night, so we didn't have a chance.
Those are like a half version or something.
Yeah, we have 4.9.
So the line items here, you'll see, they have a couple different options. Now, if you had submitted this order electronically through Tech Data, Ingram Micro, Synnex, or DNH, your shipping information will actually come back automatically. So you'll actually get notifications in here when the item has shipped, if a tracking number's been assigned to it, if its serial number's been assigned to it. That information will populate here. Now, if you're not using one of those vendors, you can manually add them. So if you get an email from FedEx saying, hey, here's your tracking number for this item, you can actually go into your PO and you can add the tracking number. So we can say, okay, let's go ahead and add our tracking number. It's for FedEx, standard overnight, and this is our ridiculously long tracking number. So we can add our tracking number in here, and what's nice about this is you can put all your tracking numbers in here, and when you right click, you can see that you can actually email these tracking numbers to users in QuoteWorks or from QuoteWorks. So if I right click, it'll actually open up this item, and I can say, hey, you got your tracking information for this item, here's the information, and then it populates the user that you quoted this document to, or this specific item to. So you can actually email the tracking numbers from QuoteWorks to your user if they need that information.
On the receiving, we have multiple quantities that go to various sites. Is it possible to do an upload to populate this versus every line item? Right now, the person in shipping has to go in and receive every item, and since it's broken up by different sites, it's quite cumbersome. Is there a way to streamline this so that we can get an upload through a preprocessor?
No.
Is it something that we could request, even
Yeah.
even if we paid for a preprocessor.
There might be, you might be able to get some custom development to essentially run an app to receive the items for you. Are you using the receive here?
We do, it takes, right now, we're having to do it in multiple places. And as I said, sometimes we'll have 200 laptops that's going to 30 sites. And he has to go in and then validate each. While we can interface and pull the tracking numbers for all of them, he has to receive each and every one. Versus interfacing and pulling that tracking number, we were wondering if we could just have a spreadsheet provided to us from FedEx or whomever, and then be able to receive it on the spreadsheet and just load it for preprocessor.
You it would definitely have to be custom. You guys are using Great Plains?
We use Great Plains.
Okay, so do you have the connection between QuoteWerks and Great Plains?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so you worked with Eric from the system before?
Yes.
Okay. He might actually be able to write something for you.
Okay.
I don't know his, if he knows development stuff outside of Great Plains and QuoteWerks, or if that's his specialty. But he might be able to do something for you. If not, I do have a couple other developers that I can put you in touch with that can probably write something. I would have to verify that this database is something that is public and can be shown. But yeah, I mean.
Okay, so
I
I
would
should
see-
work directly with you offline. Kim and I should just get in touch with you. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to send me an email, or just remind me at the end of the training,
Okay.
I can reach out to a couple people for you.
I haven't. Thanks. I've talked to him many times.
So this will have your tracking number, your serial number. Like I said, if you are receiving or you place your order through one of the distributors, you'll also get your quantity shipped and back ordered and all that information as well. You can receive your items, so you see there is an option to receive it. So if you click on receive, it'll ask you how many you received if there's more than one. So if you want to receive both or just one, hit OK. Then you can put in the serial number, location, asset tag, MAC address, and so on. When you do that, it'll turn orange and it'll basically let you know that that means that it's partially received. You'll even see your fulfillment status of your PO document itself here is marked as partial received. So this just kind of lets you know what the status is. It's also useful when you're kind of tracking or looking through your different POs and QuoteWerks. You can see, okay, this one's been submitted, this one's shipped, this one's partial shipped. You can see which ones, where essentially they are at this point. Once an item has been received, you can update QuickBooks with this received item. So you can actually sync your POs if they've been received in here with the information in QuickBooks by clicking on this little arrow here. So this little arrow, this little green arrow, this is something that you do have to do. Will sync received items into QuickBooks. So you can batch this. This doesn't have to be, I received this one item, now I need to run the sync. I received one item, now I need to sync. You can wait till you get all of them and then sync it with QuickBooks if you want to, or you can do it one at a time. It's however you want to do that. So when you click on this, it'll tell you, hey, there's one item receipt ready to sync to QuickBooks. Hit OK, and then it says item receipt record was created in QuickBooks. So if you go into QuickBooks, and that's for a very long time.
Do you have to do one item at a time, or can you do multiple?
You can do multiple. Alright, so here's the PO we created, number 39. And then you can actually see all the items in QuickBooks. And then you can see this one item was received. Quantity 2, one of the items was received. And it'll essentially update every time you run sync. Like I said,
Created into an invoice,
what's that?
purchase order?
That would be a QuickBooks question. I'm not that familiar with QuickBooks. I don't know if you can take a purchase order into an invoice.
So I thought before you had checked import to QuickBooks, so how did you get the purchase orders here? Because right now our purchase orders don't show up here.
When you are on the purchasing, so
Okay.
there's two different ways to integrate with QuickBooks. You can do an export as an estimate, sales order, or invoice into QuickBooks, or we can create the purchase order for you.
So does it need to be integrated with QuickBooks for the purchase orders to show up here?
No, it actually doesn't.
It does not.
But we have to create each one then, right? Is what you're saying? Okay.
So, typically, if you're gonna be creating purchase orders in QuickBooks, you won't export the document to QuickBooks as an estimate, sales order, or invoice, because you'd basically be duplicating work. So you'll basically decide when your quote is converted to an order, do you take that document and then convert it to a invoice or sales order or estimate in QuickBooks, or do you just wanna have QuoteWerks create a purchase order? You just need to decide how you want that done. There's no right or wrong way, it's just what your preference is, what you're used to doing. If you need to invoice out of QuickBooks, then you'll probably have QuoteWerks send it over to QuickBooks as an invoice, and then once you receive the order, once the customer's paid, then maybe you create the purchase order. That's kind of what your flow is.
Because right now we send a purchase order, because we don't order online or anything, and we send it directly from QuoteWorks, and then she is invoicing separately out of QuickBooks. So we just want to, so it would probably be smartest to send it as an invoice then, right?
Yeah, because then you wouldn't have to change it.
Then we don't have to, do we have to create all of this, because there's no real reason for us to do that.
No, it's just if you want to do purchasing in QuoteWorks.
So once it's received here in QuoteWorks, then you sync it to QuickBooks.
Correct.
And if you've already sent it over there as an invoice, then they will even update if there's any changes.
No, actually, that's a good point. So,
I'm trying to avoid this stuff.
yeah, you basically have to decide how you want to send the document from QuoteWorks to QuickBooks. If you send over the document as an invoice and then you create a purchase order, we're creating two separate documents that aren't going to talk to each other. Because we're basically saying, hey, you wanted this invoice and you wanted this purchase order. It might be the same information, but there's two different types of documents. So you need to decide if you want QuoteWorks to create the purchase order in QuickBooks. Maybe your customer pays up front every single time, so you don't even have to invoice them. They just pay. So you said, I just need the purchase order in QuickBooks so I can order their stuff. You can go from QuoteWorks directly to a QuickBooks PO. Where you're saying, no, my customer needs to pay me. Then you can go from QuoteWorks to a customer to an invoice in QuickBooks, and then once you have the invoice in QuickBooks, you can convert it from QuickBooks invoice to a purchase order, or multiple purchase orders from QuickBooks. At that point, we would like QuickBooks to do the purchasing stuff.
Sure, notification should send QuickBooks once it's been received.
No, unfortunately not. The only way to know is to basically look and see if it's been received. Once all your items have been received in QuoteWorks, just receive all of these. Once they've been received, you can actually close the PO in QuoteWorks. And it will remove it from your PO screen for today. You can always go back and find it. Just choose to include POs or include closed POs, and it'll show you a list of those. If you want to look for a specific item or the status of the specific item, you can do that through the Ordered Items tab. This will show you, this will show you a list of all the items that have been ordered through QuoteWorks. So if you want to see the status of a specific item based on the customer, the PO number, a part number, date, all that information, you can find the item here. So it makes it a little easier to find a specific item. So the ordered items is if you want to look for a specific item, get the status of that item. And purchase orders would be to look at a specific document.
So, pardon me for not being in accounting, but the accounting's done differently. We have a separate lady that does all the purchasing through QuickBooks separately. So she just, I actually print the orders, hand it to her, and she places it. But I'd like to track the tracking. So once I get that PO number, is there any way to tie that back to the vendor for what she's ordered through through QuoteWorks, that I can actually get the tracking number, if the delivery status, and get that really useful information without doing it manually?
No. Yeah, I mean, if you're printing out the document and physically handing it to her, and she's assigning the PO number, you're,
She's making it to the same vendor, so they have, I can go into their site and type in that RPO and get that order, and that's how I'm doing it now. And then I take that tracking information and paste it back in QuoteWorks, which is.
You'd have to place the order in
Yeah,
QuoteWorks
which
for
we're
it
not
to
doing.
have the.
yeah, I
to
mean,
get the
if
tracking.
you create the purchase order in QuoteWorks, you can manually come in here and you can add the tracking number and add the serial number.
Right.
The issue would be, how do you find that? Because she's creating the purchase order separately from you, so you don't have the PO number.
Well, she gives that to me, I mean, I can have access to it, but I just
Oh.
don't have it.
Well, if she can give it to you, then you can just create the PO, use the same purchase order number.
Okay.
If she'll just give you the PO number, and you can create a PO in QuoteWorks, so you just do it, essentially, you come in here, say, okay, it's these 3 items on this purchase order, create PO,
It's just double entry.
she gives you the purchase order number, and then you just type in whatever purchase order number she gives you.
And they will actually look that up on that site?
Well, it's not gonna look it up.
It's just
You're only
gonna
gonna
give
get
you
the
a number.
automatic through, if you place it through QuoteWorks,
Got it.
but you can at least put it in there manually and your numbers will match up, so if,
Well, I do track it, and,
Yeah.
but I don't, that's,
So-
what I'm looking for is the updated status of shipping and where it is and.
yeah, only if you place the order through QuoteWorks.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the purchasing?
This is tracking it through just regular, it's not tracking it through online, right?
We can do both. So if you're doing the ordering through QuoteWorks, through Tech Data, Ingram Micro, Cenex, D&H, we'll
That's
give
the
you.
online.
Right, we'll do that online. If you're not, then you can manually update the tracking number and the serial numbers here. Does anyone, any other questions about purchasing? Alright. Okay, so now we're going to backtrack just a little bit. So we were talking about exporting to QuickBooks, and how basically you have to decide between if you're going to export as a PO or if you're going to send it over as an estimate, sales order, or invoice. So that's what we're going to do next, is send it over to QuickBooks as an estimate, sales order, or invoice. So to send the document to QuickBooks, first thing you have to do is obviously have QuickBooks open and running, and then you're going to have your integration set up. Now, I have mine set up here, and I'm going to show you how to get here, but I have mine specifically defaulted to only sending over orders to QuickBooks. The reason I have it set to orders is I don't want all my quotes showing up in this non-exported documents list. If I did show it up, all my quotes, I have 750 quotes that I have to file through and figure out which ones need to be exported over to QuickBooks. So by going into my setup, and then going to my QuoteWorks tab, I can actually tell QuoteWorks what is the ready for export criteria. So in my case, I want to say only export orders that have a doc status of equal to open, or it could be something else. You could set a different document status. You could set it to, ready to export or something like that you set. It can be whatever status you'd like, but I highly recommend doing something here so you can at least kind of ease the number of documents that'll show up here. That way, what's only showing up here are documents that are actually ready to be exported into QuickBooks, rather than every single document that's created in QuickBooks.
How did you get here?
It's just on the setup. So if you click on the QuickBooks button,
Okay.
or if you click on Tools, Export Item, or Export to QuickBooks, and that'll bring you here as well.
From here, where did you go though? Oh,
The setup, bottom left.
setup,
Yeah. And if you're using Sage 50,
Yep.
the exact same.
yeah.
So in your setup, in your QuickBooks, you have the option to send it over as an invoice, estimate, and sales order. Say the most common are going to be your invoice and sales order. Typically, you're not going to send it over as an estimate, but you can if you want to. You have the option of using the QuickBooks auto numbering or the QuoteWorks document number. So I know we had that question earlier. Someone was asking about how you can keep your numbers in sync. This is where you would set that. So this is where you can say, hey, QuoteWorks, use the document number. Date of transaction, typically it's going to be the date exported, but you can use the document date from QuoteWorks One thing you need to check though is that if your document's been out there, you know, if you created it a month ago, and now it's being exported today, do you really want to use the document date or do you want to use the date exported? So it's up to you. If you do your, you know, your billing and you look at profit based on the document date rather than when it was exported in QuickBooks, you can change that if you like. If the item does not exist, QuoteWerks will automatically prompt you to create it. If it does exist, it's going to ask you if you want, it's going to either update the cost and the price, or it will not update. It's up to you. You know, if you don't want it to update, it'll still write the line item into QuickBooks correctly with the right cost, with the right price. It just won't update the QuickBooks item list with the new price or cost. So you'll just have to choose, you know, which one you want there. If terms do not exist, we'll create them or prompt to create. Either one. Same thing with ship via, same thing with the customer. If they exist, you want us to update with any changes or not update. Again, you just kind of have to decide what's going to work best for you. And then the memo. This actually tells you when you go to that QuickBooks document that the document came from QuoteWerks. So you'll see here it even says imported from QuoteWerks. Here's the QuoteWerks document number. And it even gives you the date that it was exported. So that's going to be the default memo. You can change that. You can see we have our little macro icon, so anytime you see this, you can insert a different macro.
Is there a magic list of what all the macros?
There are. In chapter 14 of the help file, yes, chapter 14 of the help file, there is a list. It says cover page, literature, and Microsoft Word template document macros. That'll show you all of the macros that are available in QuoteWorks. And then, no, it's not updated yet. Yeah, that'll be in the next one. There's a Quote Valet macros list also. But I'm trying to find it.
Not in the help file.
There's actually a page that lists all the macros and what they do.
I can look it up. Chapter 14 is good.
Yeah, if you
I can
just
look
go
it
in
up.
chapter 14, there's a list of all the macros and their definitions, if you can't figure it out.
Okay.
Purchase order integration, I have mine set as QuickBooks, but obviously you can change that here. You can also set it to none if you don't want to create purchase orders in QuickBooks. And then the PO numbering, the default, if you want to use the QuickBooks auto numbering or QuoteWorks. And then if you want to sync the received items to QuickBooks, you do need to check this box. This box is not checked by default, so if you're trying to hit the little arrow, green arrow thing when you create a purchase order and it's not doing anything, that's why, because you need to come in here and check that box. And then your invoice estimate class, you can set, if you want to always set it as something specific in QuickBooks. And if you want to retrieve a specific QuoteWorks field to pull into your invoice or estimate class, you can do that as well.
So setting that class, is it only invoice and estimate? Like
It
I
is.
export into sales order and then we have to manually.
Yeah, it's only invoice and estimate, unfortunately.
Are there any plans to do that?
Um,
Seems odd to do it in some documents, not others.
I think it's because my understanding is that sales order is not available in the Pro edition of QuickBooks. It's only available in Premier and Enterprise.
Right, Premier and Enterprise, right.
And I think originally the integration was written for Pro and then we added Enterprise and that's why it wasn't in there. But yeah, I can bring that up because that is something that should be able to be set for sales orders. Just make a quick list of this.
You were purchasing originally online, so there was an option to change the ship to.
Yes.
Is there an option anywhere else to change the ship to? Purchasing, just doing the PO or
It'll be manual. I mean, you can change it on the sold to ship tab itself. But that's really it.
and then if I do like a manual, you know, where I can deliver a purchase order from one of my layouts, I can't do it on that either.
You would have to change it on the sold to ship tab if you want to change it.
I'm talking for purchase order. So when I order from a vendor, I don't want them to ship it to us. That's kind of by default, I want them to ship it from where?
Well, it's gonna use that ship to field on this O2 ship to tab by default.
There's no way to change it.
The only way you could change it, you could use a custom field and you manually change the custom field. Yeah, there's a way to do it, there's not a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Alright, your sales tax, if you charge sales tax in QuickBooks, this is where you can set that. And then the mappings. So I think we talked about this earlier. If you have your sales rep ID mappings, this is where you set that up. The item mapping. This is a question we get a lot when we're creating an item in QuickBooks, is that we don't use the manufacturer part number, we use another field in QuoteWorks for the item name in QuickBooks. If that's you, this is where you make that change. So there's going to be a couple different options. You can use the vendor part number, an internal part number, or any of the custom text fields in QuoteWorks. This field is required. This is essentially the manufacturer part name in QuickBooks, so it is required. But if you use a different part number or some other different way of identifying your items in QuickBooks, other than the manufacturer part number, this is where you're going to make that change. Does anyone use like the internal part number field or anything like that? Go to this next section then. Alright, so we're going to go to the next section then. Discount item, I forget, someone was asking about saying when they send their documents over to QuickBooks that their subtotal is not coming over to QuickBooks. This is where you do those mappings. So your discount item, your charge item, your subtotal items, and your shipping items in QuoteWorks. This is where you set those mappings. Obviously mine aren't created, so they're not going to go over to QuickBooks. If I wanted to create them in QuickBooks, you can see there's a little option here that I'm creating QuickBooks now, and it'll let you create those. So if you're sending your documents over to QuickBooks, those line items aren't coming over, that's where you can set them. Finally, on the mappings, we can also map to custom fields. So if you have custom field information in QuoteWorks and you want to map it to custom fields in QuickBooks, you can do map item custom fields, and this will let you map those up. I don't have any QuickBooks custom fields, so I don't have any listed, so there's nothing to map. But you can see that there basically be drop downs here of the different QuickBooks fields that are available, and then which QuoteWorks field you want to map it to. It's pretty straightforward. Convert grouped items to single. So if you sell items in a group or a bundle, and it's on your document in QuoteWorks, when you export that document over to QuickBooks, if you want the items to be grouped into a single rolled up item instead of the individual items that make up that group, you'll want to check this setting. I would say 99% of you will leave this unchecked.
Where's that, Brandon? Because I do that.
What's that?
I do that.
You do that?
I don't group them, but I'd like to.
Okay, go to, are you in the QuickBooks, do you have QuickBooks on your machine?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, if you have QuickBooks running, you can get to the setup here.
Oh, you do it in QuickBooks, not.
Well, it's in QuoteWorks, but you have to have QuickBooks open to do the setting, to do the setup.
Okay. Okay.
Are you on the transaction tab up the top?
No QuickBooks.
So go to QuoteWorks. And then click on the QuickBooks icon in QuoteWorks.
Okay.
And then in the bottom left corner, click on the setup button.
Gotcha.
And then up at the top, once that finishes loading, you'll see a bunch of tabs. Click on the Mappings tab.
Okay.
And then all the way at the bottom, you'll see that checkbox that says convert grouped items into single item.
Where is that?
Should be the bottom left corner of the Mappings tab. Oh, I'm sorry. Click on the Items sub tab. So under the Mappings tab, there's an Items sub tab.
Okay.
And then underneath there, you should see where it says grouped items.
Nice.
And then if you do check that, you can change the tax code to taxable or non-taxable.
Okay.
Like I said, for most of you, you probably want the individual line items in QuickBooks, but if you just want the single rolled up item, then you'll check that box.
When that box is checked, because what happens now is when we have those bundles, it doesn't populate the heading. So then we have to manually type that in. If we check that box, is it gonna populate the heading in that whole bundle?
No, well, sort of. If you check this box, it's going to create an item with that heading. That's it. It's not going to include the individual items.
But it is gonna leave the heading there, which is our description, usually.
Not if, okay. So if you create a bundle in QuoteWerks, and when you send this document over to QuickBooks, if you check this box, this is going to take the grouped items and it's going to merge it into that heading item. And that's going to be the only item that's in QuickBooks.
That's good.
Yeah, as I said, most of you aren't going to want that. If you leave it unchecked, it's not going to include that heading item.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not going to include the heading item, and then it'll do the individual items. And then if you want QuoteWerks to automatically select your preferred vendor, check that box as well. Payments, you only really need to set this up if you're using QuoteValet to receive payments and you want QuoteWorks to export the payments over to QuickBooks. You click on the map payment methods, and this will make sure that when you export the payment from QuoteWorks into QuickBooks, that it is exported correctly into QuickBooks. Same thing with the deposit accounts. And then your different custom fields for estimate items, invoice, sales order, and POs. The defaults tab. The defaults tab is where you can set your different default settings when you're creating a item in QuickBooks. So if you remember when QuoteWorks popped up that message saying, hey, this item doesn't exist and I needed to select my different accounts, you can actually have preset accounts set up. You'll still be able to change them if you want to, but they'll be pre-populated with these. Typically it's going to be the ones that you use the most, but you can change it if you wanted to. And then the items tab is if you want to create or display the QuickBooks item list in QuoteWorks in your product lookup. Just remember, anytime you want to integrate with QuickBooks, whether you're looking up items through the product lookup or exporting, you have to have QuickBooks running. So if you don't have access to QuickBooks, I would not recommend showing the QuickBooks item list unless everyone has access to QuickBooks on their machine. Alright, so let's go ahead and export a document over to QuickBooks. I'm going to go ahead and send it over as a sales order. So we'll do this one here. I'm going to check the box and choose export. And it's going to be pretty straightforward where it's going to just walk you through some prompts. Now you can batch order them, or they'll basically, if I check all three of these, it'll export that document, it'll walk me through, and then it'll prompt me to start the next one. So I can select sales reps if I need to. This item does not exist, so it's wanting me to create it. I have some defaults set. I can choose to change those if I want to. Look at me, so I'm going to go ahead and keep them there. Same thing with that one. And that one. And then the rest of my items were sent over. Because my payment method is not mapped, basically the payment's not being sent over to QuickBooks. So that's all this message is telling me, saying, hey, your payment is not being exported to QuickBooks because it wasn't mapped. But my sales order was sent over to QuickBooks as sales order number 11. So we go to QuickBooks, and we go to our sales orders. There's sales order 11, and there's our different items. Down in my memo field, you'll see this is telling me it was imported from QuoteWorks, and there was my document number, so my order, FLA 1420, on this date at this time. Any questions about the QuickBooks integration? Any questions about exporting to QuickBooks Source H50 with H50 users? Alright. Okay. So it looks like we have about an hour and a half of time left. Right now, we're gonna go over some of the maintenance stuff, and then we're gonna go into, a lot of you had questions about customizing document layouts. So we're gonna cover those next two things, and then we'll also do management reports as well. I'll show you guys how to do that. Is there anything else that anyone would like to cover before we move forward with the other stuff? Because those things will take a little bit of time. Anything we didn't cover that anyone wants to cover? We'll make sure.
I got a question.
Sure.
On exporting, I get this error quite often, that it gets to the customer. There was an error when modifying the customer's list, gives an element number, QuickBooks error message, this list has been modified by another user.
I'll do that later.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds like a tech support issue. Alright, so let's go ahead and go into the user maintenance. This one probably won't take too long. This is going to be chapter 16 in the help file. We kind of touched on some of this, so this should make it pretty easy, but we'll go over the rest of it. So every user in QuoteWerks has what we call security settings. That's done under user maintenance. So to get there, we're going to click on Utilities, User Maintenance. And then you simply need to edit the user you want to make changes to. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and make changes to Jen. So the first tab is going to be the login tab. So the username is already going to be populated for you, but you can change the password if you need to and just confirm it. You can also lock the user out from changing the password. So if you don't want them, if you're keeping a master list of all the passwords, you can lock users from changing their own password. Master rights is an admin user in QuoteWerks. So if you give someone master rights, they essentially have access to everything in QuoteWerks. Even if you restrict them from seeing something, they can actually go in and change that setting because they're an admin user. So just keep that in mind that if you do give someone master rights, you're basically saying they have access to everything in QuoteWerks. Group membership. This is extremely useful if you have different groups in your organization, inside sales, outside sales, purchasing. This way you can apply different security settings to one user and then apply it to that entire group. So again, something to just keep in mind if you want to have someone in groups, this is where you can set that up. We'll go over how to create groups here in just a minute, but that's on another tab. The menus tab. So every menu in QuoteWerks can actually be hidden from your users. So if you want to kind of simplify it, maybe you have some reps who they open QuoteWerks and they're just overwhelmed. There's too many menus, there's too many icons. You want to simplify it for them. You can actually go through and choose which menu options they have available. One of them you might remove is going to be the approved quote. Because if they're not in management, they don't need to be able to approve quotes. They wouldn't be able to do it anyway, but just even removing the menu option just makes it a little easier for them. So you can go through the various menu options here and remove them. The icons up at the top, those correlate to mostly everything under the tools menu. So if you're not using Peachtree, if you don't want to see the best, latest, or compare, you can use the uncheck these checkboxes and they won't show up in your icon toolbar anymore. Purchasing is probably a good one for those of you who are not going to be doing any online ordering or creating purchase orders, or even if you just want to limit that from the users, you can hide the purchasing icon from your users. The main ones that I would recommend hiding from anyone that's not an admin user is going to fall under your utilities. Really, your users don't need to be in the utilities menu unless they are a remote user. Where they're outside the office, they have their own separate installation because that's where the sync is. And then I would just recommend essentially unchecking everything else and only letting them see sync. The reason I say that is because the utilities menu is where you get to the license manager. So users can actually remove licenses, has happened. People do it on accident for some reason. This is also where the user maintenance is. So if you gave someone, you know, maybe you want them to have master rights so they can just see everyone's documents, but you don't want them to actually make changes to users, you can hide the user maintenance so they can't make those changes. So they can still have master rights and get around in QuoteWerks fine, but they wouldn't be allowed to make changes to other users or security settings and things like that. So utilities menu is something that you might want to look at hiding for most of your users. Same thing with the reports. There's only one checkbox for the reports, it's management reports, it's the only type of reports we have. So the reports might also be one that you want to hide from the users as well. So you can basically go through and customize which reps have access to which menu options and kind of, you know, narrow it down. It just makes it easier when they have less things to look at and kind of search through in QuoteWerks. Any questions about the menus tab? Alright, the Access tab. This is where you essentially grant or remove access to specific features in QuoteWerks. So if you have a specific security setting that you're looking for, this is where you're going to set that. This option right here is what we call the spotlight search. So if you're saying, I don't want my customer to be able to delete documents, so I might type in delete documents. And as you start to type that in, it'll start to highlight in bold anything that matches in the Access tab. So that's the only one. So it makes it very easy to see if this is the one that you want to set for that specific user. There's a ton of different access rights. There's a whole list of them in the help file, where we actually have a list of all the security settings and what they mean. So if you're curious about what one specific security setting does, just visit the help file and have that in there. Down at the very bottom of our access rights, you'll see there's an option that says starting at can see. Can see totals in Quote Valley Web My Summary. This is, if you remember, we were talking about looking in the dashboard and seeing the actual number for the quotes and the orders for the last quarter. This is where you actually can let the user see those totals. So anything like this, you actually have to turn on for the users. These are turned off by default. You'll also see below it, these are all the date ranges as well for the dashboard and the Quote Valley Web. So this is where you'll actually turn on all the different date ranges for the users. I know they say specifically Quote Valley Web, but it also is the dashboard. So even though it says can see date range this week in Quote Valley Web My Summary, that also has to do with your dashboard as well.
I'm assuming you can't give out access rights based on group membership.
You can actually.
Okay.
Yeah, what you would do is you basically edit one user in that group, make all the changes, and then just go to the Apply To tab, and then do, so you'd say, you know, everything on the Access tab, and then you do Select User, and then you can choose the group that you want to apply it to.
So what was that exactly,
Yes.
Cannot?
Can.
Can see what?
Can see pretty much all the date ranges.
No, what does that say?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
So this one says can see totals in Quote Valley Web My Summary. So if you want to see the
Is it
dollar
towards the
value.
middle or it's towards the bottom?
Yeah, just if you go all the way to the bottom, that's where they start.
So choose whatever tab.
You can also just type in your spotlight search, if you just do can see, it'll highlight all the ones that start can see.
So I have to grab them all this week, last week, this month, last month, I have to grab them all?
If you want to see them all.
But I have to have Quote Ballet to do that.
No, it's it actually works for the dashboard too.
Oh.
Yeah, they're the same.
And there's no select all, so you can just deselect a few, you have to go through them all.
Correct.
But then I can say apply them all. And what's the executive summary thing?
That is specific to Quote Valley Web. So if you don't have Quote Valley, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, really the only ones that are applied just to the dashboard are going to be the date ranges. And the can see totals in Quote Valley Web.
So when I go to apply to, I don't have the people there,
So you would choose what you want to apply. So in this case, it would be the Access tab.
right?
and you would check that, and then you would choose select user / group and copy.
Okay.
And then on the drop down, you'd say, okay, I want to apply all these settings to everyone in inside sales or whatever your
Right,
groups
right.
are. Does anyone have any questions about the access rights?
Yes. If I have people that are in various sets, so if I have a group of inside sales and outside sales, and that person actually appears in both groups, can they have more access in one than they do in the other, and will it apply to all the other members within that group?
That's an excellent question. The way it would work is basically it's going to do the last selection. So if you apply all these access rights to inside sales, and this user is in inside sales, they now get all those access rights. If you do outside sales, that user will then get all the outside sales. So you would actually have to modify that user individually, unfortunately, to get them both.
Okay.
You may want to create a third group for that person. That way you don't run into that, because what would happen is even if later on down the road, if you change something for inside sales and reapplied it, that user is now, their access rights are going to be all changed into inside sales. So you may need to create like a third group for them. Maybe just like a sales group, not like a generic one or something like that. Any other questions on the access tab? So directly next to the Access tab is the Documents tab. The Documents tab is where you specify who has access to view, modify, delete, and prepare documents for this specific user that you're editing in QuoteWerks. So in this case, we are specifying who can view, modify, delete, or prepare documents for Jen. The only thing that will overwrite this is if you have master rights. If you have master rights, you automatically have access to do all this. But if you want to specify that, everyone in inside sales and outside sales can view my documents, everyone in inside sales can modify them, but only, the administrator can delete my documents, and anyone can prepare my documents. Those are the settings that you can do. And again, this is something that you'll be able to set to other users using that apply to. But this is where you essentially set, this person has access to view, modify, and delete, prepare, apply documents. Again, on the apply to, you can choose the document view, modify, delete, prepare access settings. You check those boxes and then choose select user, and then you choose who you want to apply those user settings to. Any questions about that? I know it's pretty straightforward, but sometimes it can be complicated. Okay. The sales tab. I know it says here that there are 3 commission types. There really are not. There's basically 2. It's essentially based on sales price and based on profit. The other is a very, very, very specific way of doing it that really won't work for anyone. So if you ask us, we will tell you that there's 2 ways that we can calculate commission in QuoteWerks without running a report. So we can do it based on sale price, based on the % of the sale. We can also do it based on the profit amount. That's it. It is very simple. If you need something more, we'd recommend you could probably run some type of report with maybe some type of calculation that could do it for you. Or you can use another program, maybe QuickBooks, to run your commissions out of. If you have very easy commissions where it says, hey, if you sell, $1,000, it's 15% of that, or if it's based on the profit amount, it's based on that, we can do that just fine, and it'll even show up here as they're creating a document.
So, ConnectWise, QuoteWerks, and QuickBooks all have the ability to track commissions. I'm assuming each individual software package has its own quirks. And that's a good point, because if you have house accounts where you're getting a specified commission on, the renewal of an agreement,
Right.
or a small percentage on hardware sales on just the profit spread, but then on a new sale you're getting a different commission. If there's that many different commission structures, can any one of these programs work better than another, or do you not know?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Richter has a suggestion.
QuickBooks is gonna be your best,
Is it, okay.
best weapon.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
Your accounting package is gonna be the best tool. Any accounting package normally can handle commissions a lot better than any contact manager or QuickBooks.
Plus QuickBooks is gonna tell you whether the account is paid on that and maybe not getting the commission until it's paid, okay.
That's always our recommendation. When we do implementations with any of our customers, we always recommend, when they bring up commissions, we always recommend this is gonna give you a ballpark figure,
Yep.
but you're gonna wanna track everything out of your accounting package.
And then the apply to tab, we've talked about a few times now, so this is where you'll apply those settings across the board. For your settings to take effect, you do need to hit OK, otherwise everything you've done will be lost. So just make sure you hit OK when you're making changes. You can change preferences for a user, so if you're setting up a new user and you want them to just be able to log into QuoteWerks and be ready to go, you can edit the user, highlight the username, and then click preferences. And you can actually set the preferences for that specific user so they don't have to do it themselves. If you want to set it up for them, if they're a nice person and you're saying, oh, we're going to make it easy on you, you can fill out all their information. This is also where you're going to set up your groups on this groups tab. So we have our users tab and our groups tab. Groups tab is where you can create those different groups in QuoteWerks. When you highlight a group, it'll show you how many group members each one has. So it's kind of good if you know that, hey, this group has no members, maybe we should just delete it because no one's actually in that group. So if you need to create a new one, you can do that. You can't edit the group members from here. You can just create new groups or edit the existing group name or delete the group. Oh, last thing I wanted to mention, when you edit a user, a lot of times, well, sometimes, users leave. Employees leave, happens. So we don't recommend you deleting that user from QuoteWerks. That can cause some issues because you won't have access to their documents. So what we've done is you can set the user as inactive. And what that'll do is that will remove them from the drop-down list when you log into QuoteWerks so that they don't show up there. They won't show up in your user list either, but you'll still have access to their documents. You can still report on their documents. You won't get any weird error messages because the user doesn't exist.
Who could still see their documents though?
Any master rights user,
But only the master right user.
or anyone who
No,
has
unless
access
you've
to
given someone else specific
Yeah.
rights to see their docs.
We can all see each other's because we're small.
And then if you check the box here, this will show you any of the inactive users. Any questions about user maintenance? Security, access rights, documents, anything like that?
Well, we deleted a user and still have access to the document. It just gives me an error every time I open one of his documents. Gives me an error if they can't find that user, but I can still duplicate it or clone it. Or,
Yeah.
so it doesn't actually. I thought you just said you lose the documents.
Well,
That's because you have master rights. If users who didn't have master rights, they would completely not be able to see it.
Oh, okay.
And when you look at the sales rep, it's going to be blank as well.
and if you do any reporting, it'll essentially reporting will be off. It's gonna look. It's not gonna find that user.
Right.
Any other questions with the information here, user maintenance? Alright, I think this is a good stopping point to take a break, so we'll break till 4:02. If you guys want to use the restroom, get coffee. When we get back, we're going to cover the document layouts and management reports. I know that's a big one for one.